Netflix just made an announcement that broke the internet in under 60 seconds. And no, this isn't another rumor. This isn't a fan-made post that got mistaken for official news. This is confirmed, real, and the date is locked in, March 21. But here's what nobody is talking about. While millions of fans worldwide are celebrating the news of BTS's comeback live being streamed globally on Netflix, there's a conversation happening underneath all the noise. A conversation in the forums, in the Discord servers, in the comment sections that most people scroll past without reading. A conversation about two specific members, Jimin and Suga, and what their appearance in this comeback actually means. Because for these two, March 21 isn't just a comeback date. For these two, stepping back onto that stage carries a weight that most casual observers won't fully understand. And by the end of this video, you will. But I need you to stay with me, because there's a detail buried inside this story that even the most dedicated ARMY might have missed, and it changes everything about how you'll watch that live stream on March 21. Hello everyone, welcome back to this channel. If you're the kind of ARMY who wants more than just headlines, who wants context, depth, and the story behind the story, you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because this is the kind of content we deliver here consistently. Now let's get into it, because there is a lot to unpack. Let's build the picture first, because context is everything. Netflix's announcement of a global BTS comeback live on March 21 didn't come quietly. It dropped like a bomb across every major social media platform simultaneously, and within minutes the tags were trending in dozens of countries. This wasn't a small regional broadcast or a limited access fan event. This was Netflix, one of the largest streaming platforms on the planet, committing to bringing BTS back to a global audience in real time. For anyone who understands what BTS has built over the past decade, the significance of this is hard to overstate. A live comeback on Netflix means instant, simultaneous access for fans in Jakarta, London, Sao Paulo, Seoul, Lagos, and Los Angeles, all watching the same stage at the same moment, with no barrier between them and the performance. That alone would be enough to make this a major event. But the reason this particular announcement ignited such an intense reaction in fan communities isn't just about the platform or the scale. It's about who is on that stage. Because BTS hasn't been performing together as a full group in quite some time. The members have been on their individual journeys, solo projects, military service, personal growth. And now, as the pieces begin to come back together, every single member's return carries its own emotional weight, none more so than Jimin and Suga. Let's start with the chronology of how this conversation actually unfolded in fan communities. The moment Netflix's announcement went live, the immediate reaction was predictable. Excitement, disbelief, screaming in all caps, the usual beautiful chaos that only a BTS announcement can trigger. Hashtags exploded, Stan Twitter moved at a speed that defies normal human comprehension. Group chats that had been quiet for months suddenly came back to life. But within hours, as the initial wave of euphoria began to settle, something more specific started to emerge in the conversations. Fans started asking questions, not about the event itself, but about the individuals within it. And two names kept appearing over and over again in threads, in posts, in comment sections across platforms.
Jimin Suga. The discussion around these two wasn't negative. It wasn't filled with worry or anxiety in the way that sometimes happens in fandom spaces. It was something more nuanced than that. It was anticipation mixed with a very specific kind of emotional awareness. Fans who had been paying close attention to both members' journeys over the past year or two were processing what it meant to see them back on a stage of this magnitude. And that conversation, once it started, didn't stop. Here's where it gets layered. And this is the part that most surface-level coverage of this story completely misses. To understand why Jimin and Suga specifically became the focal point of fan discussion around this comeback, you have to understand what each of them has been carrying. For Jimin, the journey leading up to March 21st has been one of the most publicly vulnerable stretches of his career. He has never been someone who hides his emotional state behind a polished public persona. ARMY knows this. They've watched him work through self-doubt in real time, speak openly about pressure and expectation, and pour himself completely into every performance in a way that sometimes looked almost painful to witness. His solo work over the past couple of years showed a version of Jimin that was more exposed than ever, artistically, emotionally, creatively. He took risks that not every idol would take. He made choices that prioritized artistic authenticity over commercial safety. And while those choices earned him enormous respect from critics and fans alike, they also meant that every subsequent public appearance carried heightened significance. March 21st on Netflix isn't just Jimin performing again. For a large portion of ARMY, it's Jimin returning, fully, completely, as part of the group that built everything after a period of deep personal and artistic exploration. That's not something you can watch casually. For Suga, the wait is different but equally profound. Those who have been following closely know that Suga's path has included not just the demands of his extraordinary solo career under the name August D, but also personal challenges that he has navigated with a level of quiet resilience that defines his character. He is not a performer who asks for sympathy or draws attention to his struggles. He processes things internally, channels them into music, and shows up when it counts. And showing up on a Netflix global live stream on March 21st alongside his members after everything, that is Suga showing up when it counts. Fan communities recognized this immediately, and that recognition is what fueled the conversation that's been building ever since the announcement dropped. But wait, because there's another layer to this that most people haven't stopped to consider. Think about what it means for these two specific performers to share a stage in this particular context, a Netflix global stream, reaching audiences who may have followed BTS for years, audiences who may be discovering them for the first time, and audiences who stepped away during the quiet period and are now finding their way back. Jimin and Suga, despite being bandmates for over a decade, represent two profoundly different artistic energies. Jimin is all presence and emotion. He pulls you in through vulnerability and movement and a kind of raw expressiveness that's difficult to look away from. Suga is precision and depth. He hits you with words and sound and a controlled intensity that only reveals its full impact after the moment has passed. When those two energies exist on the same stage, they don't cancel each other out. They create a tension that makes everything more interesting. And the fans who have been in this fandom long enough to understand that dynamic, they're not just excited about March 21st, they're watching for specific moments, specific interactions, specific performances, because they know that whatever Jimin and Suga bring to that stage, it will not be forgettable.
And here's the detail that almost nobody has talked about yet. The thing buried inside the community discussions that deserves far more attention than it's getting. Several longtime ARMY members and various fan forums have pointed out that this comeback, streamed globally on Netflix, represents the first time in a significant while that both Jimin and Suga will be performing for an audience of this scale simultaneously. Not back-to-back appearances, not separate events, the same stage, the same night, the same global audience watching in real time. For fans who have been tracking both of their individual journeys separately, following Jimin's solo releases, following Suga's August D work, watching their individual interviews and appearances, the convergence of those two separate storylines onto one Netflix stage on March 21st feels like a narrative moment, like two threads that have been running parallel, finally coming back together. That's not something that happens by accident, and ARMY knows it. Let's go deeper, because this story deserves more than surface analysis. The relationship between Jimin and Suga within BTS has always been one of the more quietly compelling dynamics in the group. They're not the pair that gets the most attention in casual fan conversation. That spotlight often goes to other combinations. But those who have paid close attention over the years will tell you that the Jimin-Suga dynamic is one of the most genuinely interesting in the group's history. They came from different places, different backgrounds, different artistic instincts, different ways of processing the world. In interviews over the years, both have spoken in various ways about what it means to share a creative space with people who see things differently than you do. Suga has talked about the value of working with people who challenge his perspective. Jimin has talked about the members who quietly push him to demand more of himself. Body language between the two, observed across years of content, tells a story of mutual respect that doesn't require performance or demonstration. It's in the small moments, the glances, the reactions during live performances, the way one responds when the other is being interviewed. It's the kind of dynamic that develops over a decade of genuinely shared experience, and it cannot be manufactured or imitated. What this means for March 21 is that every moment they share on that Netflix stage will be read through the lens of that history. Every performance will carry the accumulated weight of everything that came before it. An ARMY, particularly the segment of ARMY that has been paying close attention, will be watching every frame. Not to analyze or dissect in a way that diminishes the moment, but because they understand that what they're witnessing is something that exists in a very specific window of time, and they want to be fully present for it. And now we reach the part of this story that I think matters most. Beyond the platform, beyond the date, beyond the fan discussions and the viral threads and the trending hashtags, what is March 21 actually about?
It's about return. Not just BTS returning to the stage, but Jimin returning to the stage after a period of artistic exploration that asked everything of him. Suga returning to the stage after a journey that required a different kind of courage than performing ever did. And both of them doing it together, in front of the world, on a platform that will make their performance simultaneously visible to every corner of the globe. There's something almost unbearably poignant about that, if you let yourself feel it. Because the thing about artists who genuinely care about their work, and both Jimin and Suga are, without question, in that category, is that every return to the stage is an act of courage. It would be easier not to. It would be easier to stay in the controlled environment of studio work, of solo projects, of spaces where you have more control over the outcome. Choosing to step back onto a live stage in front of a global Netflix audience as part of something larger than yourself, that requires a specific kind of trust. Trust in your members, trust in your craft, and the willingness to be seen completely by everyone watching. For Jimin, who has spent his career wrestling with the fear of not being able to convey what he feels, that trust is everything. For Suga, who has always channeled his most honest self into his art while maintaining careful boundaries around his private life, that visibility is not something he takes lightly. March 21 is the night both of them choose to be seen anyway. And ARMY will be there, all of them, across every time zone, every language, every version of this fandom that has ever existed, gathered on Netflix, watching in real time, holding that moment together. That's not just a comeback. That's something that doesn't have a name yet, but you'll recognize it when you feel it. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know your answer. When you think about Jimin and Suga both appearing on that Netflix global stream on March 21, what is the one moment you're most hoping to see? Is it a specific performance, a specific interaction, or is it something harder to define? Just the feeling of seeing them back, together, on a stage that the whole world is watching. Tell me in the comments, because the best part of being in this community isn't just having opinions, it's sharing them with people who actually understand why any of this matters. And if this video gave you something to think about beyond just the announcement itself, if it helped you feel the weight of what March 21 actually represents, share it. Not for the algorithm, but because there are fans out there who need someone to put into words exactly what they've been feeling since that Netflix announcement dropped. That's all for today. Thank you for watching until the very end. March 21 cannot come fast enough. See you in the next one. Purple U.